Okay, well, yeah, here we are. Good morning. We are going to continue in the book of Exodus, and we are getting into a whole lot of chapters about the tabernacle. And so I thought, well, I don't want to be responsible for your boredom. So that's why I invited Scott along, because Scott is never boring. Neither is my friend Jim Davey. So, Jim, thank you for being here. Jim joins us from up in Kalispell. So, glad that you have. Well, I'm just glad you're here, Jim. Thanks. So, we're going to talk about the tabernacle for a number of weeks now, and because there's a lot of chapters about it. What Exodus does is it says Moses, by the way, is up on the mountain. He's gone back up. He came down, gave the law, wrote it down, read it to the people. All the people said, yes, we will obey. We will do everything God wants us to do. Said that twice. God had a ceremony. They sprinkled blood on the altar and on the people as a sign of, okay, we're making this covenant together. Then God invites the leaders up partway on the mountain, has a meal with them, says, hey, we're together in this. Let's have fellowship. We're now on the same team. And says to Moses, come on further up. I have many more instructions to give you. So Moses is up on the mountain. There's this great big cloud, lightning, looks like pillars of fire. People are afraid to go up there. Moses might be afraid to go up there too, but he's there. And God begins to tell him, hey, here's what I want you to build. I want you to build a tabernacle. And so 25, 26, 27, 28, I mean, we get these very detailed descriptions about what the tabernacle should look like. And then there's some narrative in between. And then we have more chapters that say, and so they began to build the tabernacle, and it looked like this. So rather than preach on what it looked like twice, I thought we're going to combine all of that material, and we're going to have a number of forges about different aspects of the tabernacle. So just by way of definition, a tabernacle is a moving tent or a moving temple, really. The tabernacle is God's dwelling place. They are going to enter the promised land, and all of the other nations have a temple. All the other nations have a visible place in which their gods dwell, and they go to worship God. So God says, I know what's going to happen if I don't give them a visible representation or a visible place to come and worship me. They're going to want to look like all the rest of the nations, and they're going to set up this temple that I don't want to be associated with all these images that aren't godly, and they're going to worship other gods. So God says, here's the way it works. So build a tabernacle, and I'll tell you all the dimensions, I'll tell you how it works, and this is how you're to worship. So that's what we're going to get into. We're going to talk about the movable temple. By the way, Solomon's temple was built on these instructions. So was the New Testament temple. So this is God really saying, people of Israel, this is what you are going to look like in your worship to me as you get together. So we have just a quick video before we get into all this material. We have a video about the temple, just to give you a visual of what we're looking at. So go ahead, Dan. Okay, so obviously that's not from Moses' iPhone or anything like that. Uh, but wouldn't that be something to have actual pictures? But I think that's a pretty, gives us a pretty fair representation. It might not be exact, but I think it's a fair representation of what the temple would have looked like. And so we're just going to get into that and talk about that. So today we're actually looking at three passages of scripture: Exodus 25, Exodus 35, and Exodus 38. So I'm going to read not all of that, I don't think, but portions of that. And today you'll see up on the screen, I'm going to use the New Living Translation for some of it. Simply because the New Living Translation, especially when we get to chapter 38, takes the words cubits and turns them into feet and inches and pounds and all that kind of stuff. So we can
cubits, talents, and shekels.
Right. Yes. Yes. Well, I could have given you that job, I suppose.
That's all right.
You could have interpreted. I don't know. Next
pass.
week. Well, I don't know. Maybe
Play
next
the
week.
not nailed to a card.
Yeah, that's right. For now. Okay, so Exodus 25 rather. Let me turn there if I can get there quick enough. Exodus 25, verses 1 through 9. So the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the people of Israel to bring me their sacred offerings. Accept the contributions from all whose hearts are moved to offer them. Here's a list of sacred offerings you may accept from them. Gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, fine linen and goat hair for cloth, tanned ram skins, and fine goat skin leather." So if you have an NIV or an NASB or probably any other version than NLT, it will say sea cows or something like that, which is more accurate than the NLT, which turns it into goat skin leather, and we'll talk about why later. Verse 6, olive oil for the lamps, spices for the olive anointing oil, and the fragrant incense, onyx stones and other gemstones to be set in the ephod and the priest's chest piece. Have the people of Israel build me a holy sanctuary so I can live among them. You must build this tabernacle and its furnishings exactly according to the pattern I will show you. So that begins the discussion on that. Let me turn to Exodus chapter 35. And God again kind of goes through that list. Exodus 35, 4 through 29. Oh, I'm on 34. Then Moses said to the whole community of Israel, "This is what the Lord's commanded. Take a sacred offering for the Lord. Let those who with generous hearts present the following gifts to the Lord." I won't read that again because it's the same list. Verse 10 of chapter 35. "Come, all of you who are gifted craftsmen, construct everything that the Lord has commanded. The tabernacle and its sacred tent, its coverings, clasps, frames, crossbars, posts, and bases, the ark and its carrying poles, the ark's cover and the place of atonement, the inner curtain to shield the ark, the table, its carrying poles, and on it goes." I won't talk about that specifically today. We'll get into that next week. Verse 20. "So the whole community of Israel left Moses and returned to their tents. All whose hearts were stirred and whose spirits were moved came and brought their sacred offerings to the Lord. They brought all the materials needed for the tabernacle, for the performance of its rituals, and for their sacred garments. Both men and women came, all whose hearts were willing. They brought to the Lord their offerings of gold, brooches, earrings, rings from their fingers, and necklaces. They presented gold objects of every kind as a special offering to the Lord. All those who owned the following items willingly brought them: blue, purple, and scarlet thread, fine linen and goat hair for cloth, and tanned ram skins with fine goat skin leather. All who had silver and bronze objects gave them as a sacred offering to the Lord, and those who had acacia wood brought it for use in the project." Verse 25, "All the women who were skilled in sewing and spinning prepared blue, purple, and scarlet thread and fine linen cloth. All the women who were willing used their skills to spin the goat hair into yarn. The leaders brought onyx stones and special gemstones to be set in the ephod." Verse 30, No, I think we're done there, right? Yeah, we've done it, verse 29. So they're bringing all of those materials, all whose hearts are willing. And then in verse 38, we get a list of what was brought. Next, in chapter 38, verses 21 through 31. This is an inventory of the materials used in building the tabernacle of the covenant. The Levites compiled the figures as Moses directed, and Ithamar, son of Aaron, the priest, served as recorder. Bezalel, son of Uri, grandson of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made everything just as the Lord had commanded. He was assisted by Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, a craftsman expert in engraving, designing, and embroidering with blue, purple, and scarlet thread and fine linen cloth. The people brought special offerings of gold totaling 2,193 pounds, as measured by the weight of the sanctuary. The gold was used throughout the tabernacle. The whole community of Israel gave 7,545 pounds of silver, as measured by the weight of the tabernacle. The silver came from the tax collected from each man registered in the census. The tax was collected from 550,000 men who had reached their 20th birthday. More, verse 27, the 100 bases for the frames of the sanctuary walls and for the posts supporting the inner curtain required 7,500 pounds of silver, about 75 pounds for each base. That was a pretty heavy base. And that you weren't just going to pick that up and take off with it. The people also brought special offerings of 5,310 pounds of bronze, which was used for casting the bases of the posts at the entrance of the tabernacle, and for the bronze altar with its bronze grating and all the altar utensils. So the people have been asked to bring an offering to build this tabernacle. And they bring thousands of pounds of gold and silver and bronze, and they're bringing thread and cloth and materials and just all sorts of things. So my question to you guys is, where did all this come from?
Yeah, wasn't from the Mall of Cairo.
No, right. They didn't go shopping the day before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have all this stuff. Where did it all come from?
You want me to answer that?
Well, either you or Jim. Help me out here.
I'm going to go back to the Exodus night itself, when firstborn has been slain and everybody says, get out of here, get out of here. And Moses told everybody, ask for gold and silver and clothing for your children.
Right.
And it says, and thus they plundered the Egyptians.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, that was kind of a lot. We think, oh, was that just a thing they thought up on the last minute?
Right.
But no, you go back to Exodus chapter 3, when Moses is there at the burning bush, and he's talking, and God is saying, okay, the people will be favorably disposed towards you. You can ask them for all this stuff, and thus you will plunder the Egyptians.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And going back even further, if we go back to Genesis 15, when Abraham is making the covenant with God, God's making the covenant. Abraham's got these animals cut in half. He's been fighting off the wild beasts. The scary thing, and God comes and says, your descendants, who you don't have any of yet,
Right.
are going to go and be slaves for 400 years.
Yeah.
And then they're going to come back with great possessions. It's like God promised all this stuff back to Abraham before Isaac was even born, that they would come out with all this stuff. And, for me, I thought it was interesting because I'd kind of been reading some of the other stuff. When they were plundering, like if they plundered a city or plunder something, they would, a lot of times they would just kill all the males. And then they would take the women, the children, all the animals and everything.
Right.
But this one, they just took the gold, silver, and clothing. Yeah. They left the people. It was like, for me, I was like, this is incredible act of mercy on God's part to the Egyptians, who had been nice to the Israelis.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that he left them their lives and
Yeah.
he left them their animals and stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So,
yeah.
but I mean, the people come out, they potload of stuff.
Right.
You know,
So yeah, it's not a mistake. God had this plan
was
from the beginning.
from the beginning.
Yeah. Jim, you made a number of comments about the plunder that they brought with them, and I think in one of your comments said it was kind of surprising as you were reading through Exodus again and just your normal Bible reading that you kind of said, hey, I didn't even realize they had all this stuff with them that whole time.
Yeah, if we stop and think, if we've seen, Cecil B. DeMille's Exodus or other movies like that, and they've got their belongings or whatever, but you have to stop and think that they've all this stuff, gold, silver, linens, all these things, they've just got all of that packed in these wagons, and maybe they're carrying some of it or whatever else.
Right.
And so I hadn't really thought that it was good, God provided, but then on the other hand, it was also a little bit of a burden. They had to take all this stuff with them, and whether they had donkeys or mules or whether they had to pull it themselves, it was pretty intensive. And then as they were going, they had to make sure that it didn't rust, that the moths didn't get it. They had to make sure that no one stole it. So it was sort of a little bit of a mixed blessing. They had all this stuff, but they're carting it through the desert. Every place they go, and as soon as the spirit moves, the cloud moves, then they have to gather up all their stuff and they have to take it, and then they have to stop, and then they have to gather it and they have to take it. So I had not realized before what a burden all that was. It was a blessing, but it was also a burden.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't thought of that until I read what you wrote there. I thought, yeah.
Well, to start thinking, these people had to have like carts of stuff that they were carrying. I mean, it wasn't just a backpack.
Well, and I imagine maybe some of the Egyptians said, here, take my cart so you can carry it all.
Yeah, I mean, we look at the original. You mentioned that they came down there with some riches.
Sure.
When Isaac and the family all came down.
Yeah, they were very wealthy to begin with.
Yeah, Pharaoh had sent some carts up to help them bring all their stuff down.
Yeah.
And and then they got to live in the nice area of town. The Ramses section.
Right, near
They had
Goshen
nice.
there,
So they got to know a lot, and they got to at least rub elbows with some of the upper class type people.
Right.
It wasn't like they were stuck off in slave zone.
Yeah.
So they had access, to getting all these fine fabrics and stuff.
Yeah.
It was all this planning that we don't think about.
Right.
To put it in modern terms, every once in a while, I'm sure you see it in your area, but we'll see it around Kalispell. There will be a motorhome going by, and back of that there'll be a vehicle, and then back of that there'll be a boat, and back of that there'll be something else. I mean, they've got everything, and I have to stop and think, man, if I'm driving that thing, I have to be really, really careful going around curves and hooking things up and unhooking them or whatever. At what point, again, is too much too much?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah.
Well, even going through the Red Sea with all these carts, they went through like on dry ground, because if that was mud, they're not making it through with those carts.
No, that's for sure. Well, imagine how hard it is in the sand.
Yeah.
You're weighted down by 100 pounds of gold.
Yeah.
Your wheels are sinking into the sand. It's harder for the oxen or donkeys or whatever to cart.
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff.
It is a lot of stuff. Now, knowing people, we like our stuff.
Yeah.
Right? We're willing to haul a lot of stuff through life. I mean, when Val and I moved here, we had a storage unit for a while because we needed a place for our stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Well, the worst thing we ever did was to get a storage unit. I mean, we didn't need that storage unit. It was a burden. We had to pay for our stuff, which we'd already bought. I'm pretty sure we could have bought new stuff for less than we paid.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was our stuff, right? And we got to keep it because it's our stuff. Well, the day came when we finally got to clear out, we were giving stuff away. Like take this. We don't want this crazy storage unit anymore. We don't even want this stuff. It's a burden, but somehow or other we had to keep it. Right? I mean,
Sentimental value.
Sentimental value. It makes you feel more rich, I guess, or more. Is there a sense of security in our stuff, right? So it's amazing to me, knowing my heart, knowing human nature. It's amazing to me that all these people in Israel start giving away their gold and their silver and their bronze and the clothing that they plundered. You know, the blue cloth. Blue cloth was the only color of blue the Egyptians knew at that time. So, you know, God didn't ask for green because he didn't plunder any. But, you know, all of this expensive materials, and red dye was expensive. The blue was expensive. They had fine linens that were given. The fine linens was made from flax, and it was the linen they used to wrap mummies. I mean, it was good stuff. It was high quality stuff. You go to market somewhere and you're going to sell that at a good price.
Yeah.
And you know, in the back of their mind, I've got my inventory of how much stuff I have in my storage unit, right? And what it might be worth. And then Moses says, "Hey, we're going to build a tabernacle. And this is what we need. So anyone who's willing, anyone whose heart prompts them to give, just go ahead and give." And what's amazing to me is in Exodus 36, we read there that, I don't have this up on the screen or anything, but there came a point in Exodus 36 where the guys working on all of it said, "Moses, like, we got more than enough. We can't use everything that people are bringing, so tell them to stop giving."
Yeah.
Jim, in all of your years, in all of your 40-some years of leading churches, have you ever had to go up or had the opportunity to go up in front of people and say, "We have too much money, please don't give as much"?
No, I haven't. Not yet.
No, no. I mean, how amazing would that be?
Yeah.
So what prompted people to give? Where's all this coming from?
Yeah. I mean, you've got talking about people's hearts and that's, you kind of wonder, we got all this stuff from people who were willing to give. We know there's a bunch of people who probably gave nothing.
Yes.
I mean, they did have the temple tax. They got to do that half shekel that everybody had to pay.
Right.
But there were probably people who still had a good handful of gold.
Well, look at a guy like Achan, right?
Yeah.
As you move on into Joshua, Achan steals silver and gold and hides it under his tent. So not everybody's heart prompted them to give.
And then there's the gold that was used for the golden calf that was all kind of ground up. And
That's right.
That did not get used in the temple.
That's right. There was still enough gold to make a golden calf.
Yeah, I mean, so there was a bunch. Like, I brought a visual display about how much. This is a little container. You can get these at Costco. But this is about the size of a ton of gold. If this was solid gold, this would weigh a ton.
Huh. Wow.
But, I was like, it kind of threw me. It's like, wow, you figure a ton of gold.
Yeah.
We're used to thinking in terms of gravel or something like that. But, a ton of gold. But then you start looking at a lot of the things that, we'll get into with upcoming weeks.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff was overlaid with gold, which they take the gold and pound it real thin.
Right.
And, so, okay, because I started, well, how thin is gold leaf, they use nowadays?
Yeah.
I mean, the modern manufactured stuff gets down to, it's like 1/4 of a millionth of an inch thick.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know if they pounded it that thin.
Right.
But, they can still get to the point where you can get it pounded and you can just kind of blow on it and it goes.
Right.
And I was looking at the thing, they had the Dome of the Rock Mosque over in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Big honking dome, covered with gold.
Yeah.
said, okay. Then they redid that like in 1993 and 94. I took 180 pounds of gold.
Wow.
So this much gold would have done that 10 times.
Yeah. And
It's like,
yeah.
I mean, we've got a lot of solid gold things
Right.
that are built.
Yes. Yes.
But a lot of
Yeah.
the gold is
Yeah.
getting spread a lot. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah.
It's going to look like a lot more gold.
It's interesting to me as you think, as you show us if that was solid gold, that's a ton of gold. How many people listening have just tried to calculate in their minds how much that would be worth today? Right? Don't we do that?
Oh,
Like, whoa, I wish I had that much gold. It'd be worth this much. I'd be set for life. So say everybody got a ton of gold.
Yeah.
And everybody who's listening, everybody in the room has their own ton of gold. And Moses comes along and God says, hey, I want to build a tabernacle. I want to build my kingdom. I want people in this whole earth to know who I am. So we're going to build a structure so people can know who I am. And they can come and they can learn of me and their lives can be changed for eternity. So we're going to build this thing. It's going to cost $3 billion. How many of us would scrape off some gold? How many would give the whole thing? How many, right? So there's some who would never give anything, like, hey, it's my gold. I need it for retirement or whatever.
Yeah.
And some would give part and some would give all. What prompts people to give to God? What's the difference between those who didn't give and those who did give? Or those who give a little bit and those who give a lot? What's the difference between generosity and stinginess? Help us walk through that, because this is really, to me, as I read this, I think, wow, how could they give so much that Moses had to say, you're giving too much, stop?
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's a little bit foreign in leading churches, is, and as Jim can attest to, in leading churches, you got to almost beg people to give. And here, people want to give. What's the difference?
I think, first of all, that they were very thankful. Thankful for God leading them out of Egypt and out of slavery. And now they had all this stuff, and so they were able to give. They had the means to give. But I think that just generosity for all that God had done. And sometimes we're followers, and so a couple people who are very, very generous stepped forward and started giving very generously, very liberally, and that inspired others. So I think it's a wonderful thing that we see here, that they gave and they gave and they gave so much that eventually they had to say, stop.
Yeah.
I think it's the gratitude, like you mentioned,
Yes.
that thankfulness. You got, it's just a couple months out of Egypt at this point.
Right.
I mean, they're getting manna every day. There's the pillar of fire and all this going on.
Yeah.
God's presence, for the most part, other than when they're complaining about water and everything they eat,
Right.
it's there in front of them all the time. And I think a lot of them can realize, well, maybe we've gone a couple of months. Boy, this should be this season back in Egypt, and we'd be doing this and this and this.
Sure, yeah.
We'd have the guys whipping our backs and everything, but we're free now.
Yeah.
And I think, there's got to, at that point, there's still some gratitude. They haven't gotten to the point where, oh, not this again,
Right.
It's still fairly fresh.
Yeah. Another thing I think is their awe of God. So these are people that had seen all 10 plagues in the land of Egypt. These are people that saw God miraculously part the waters so they could go through the Red Sea on dry ground. Then the water covers the Egyptian army. And then they're at Mount Sinai, and smoke and fire and the voice of God himself. So I think a part of it too, not only with generosity, but awe. This is God, the creator of the heavens and earth, greater than all the gods of the Egyptians, greater than all the gods of the Canaanites where they were going to go. And so I think that's another aspect that was behind their giving.
I was thinking one thing that just came to mind is that here they are, and we've got this awesome God. We've got the fire. We've got the smoke.
Right.
We've got the Egyptians being killed off.
Yeah.
And God is asking us to be part of what he's doing. He says, I want this tabernacle. You guys can be part of this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of neat that God invites the people. God could just say, dig a hole here because there's a bunch of gold. You could do it here.
Right.
But he invites the people to participate in it.
Great point.
Yeah. Yeah. I want you to expand on that a bit more.
I don't know. It just popped into my head. But I mean, it's a thing where.
Why is that important? Why is it important that God invites us? And why is it important that we accept that invitation? This is going in a different direction
Yeah, I know.
planned on going.
Yeah, I was, because I was thinking, later on, as you go, and we've got all the things we're going to talk about the next few weeks. We've got this very precise tabernacle. We've got very precise, this is how you do the sacrifices. The blood goes here, the fat goes here, this goes there, this goes there. And then by the time you start getting on a few hundred years, you get to Isaiah, and it says, why are you trampling my courts?
Right.
I don't like your sacrifices. You're thinking, what happened to the magic formula?
Right. Right.
And it got to the point where it was just mechanical. And and you go back to the whole thing where I look at this as God is that heart relationship where people are saying, God is saying, I choose to be among you. I could just stay up here on the mountain. Once in a while, somebody will come up and that'll be good. But I choose to live among you. And I choose to be in relationship with you.
Yeah.
And that's, we got all the sin offerings. You guys are separated from me, but I'm offering you a chance that we can have fellowship together.
Yeah.
And, and that's the whole thing. It gets down to that heart relationship with God. And when God, you've got this amazing, awesome God saying, I want to be in relationship with you. It's like, look nowadays, you look like, I just saw a thing last night of Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney comes over to your house. Hey, I've been hearing about you. Can we go out to dinner?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, of course. This would be so cool.
Right.
I get to go out with this famous person.
Right.
And God is saying, I want to sup with you. I want to have fellowship with you. You are my creation. I love you. I'm going to give my son's life on you, for you. And it's like, oh, really? You love us that much?
Yeah.
But God, says, I want to have this fellowship. I want to have a place to meet with you. You want to be part of this?
I wrote down as you watched, you made the statement. By the time the Israelites hit the time of Isaiah, their sacrifices, their giving was just mechanical.
Yeah.
It wasn't in response to knowing God anymore. It was in response to trying to manipulate God. It was like mechanical. Okay, if I do this, I pull the arm, the three things line up, and I get some money from God. I get blessing.
God's on my side now. Okay.
Right, I've appeased God. I'm blessed for the week. Awesome. So, any thoughts about that, Jim? I know that's a different direction than we thought we might head, but
Went
here we
off
are.
script again. Oh.
I just like that picture of that you just painted, Scott, between mechanical and fellowship, relationship.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this thought goes along with it or not, but one of the thoughts that I have is God isn't interested in spiritual welfare. And so if we go back to what welfare is in our country, it's something good, but a lot of times the government gives money without any expectation. So here's the first time throughout this whole Exodus experience that the Israelites are finally asked to do something on their own in response to God, to be able to give. And I think that's a good thing. When people come forward at our church for prayer, this is how I like to look at it. So sometimes they come forward, we sit there, we talk to them, we anoint them, whatever, and we're doing everything, and they're not participating in the process. So what I like to do, I said, we will pray with you, but I want you to pray yourself for this need. So I think that sometimes as we look at this is an opportunity for God to show that our faith ought to be hands-on.
Yeah.
There's always something for us to do. In fact, another insight I had this week, since you mentioned this, and it's amazing the insights you get when you start looking at something. But God's blessings are never meant to end with us. They're always meant to be shared with others.
Yeah. Say that again.
Salvation is meant to be shared with others. Yeah. If I have health, I'm supposed to share that so I can help maybe move a neighbor or lift something or whatever else. If I have wisdom, it's supposed to be shared with others. If I have encouragement, I should share with others. So I think there's a great principle here that hopefully that we all go away with this morning, that however much God blesses us, we want to be thankful, but we also want to make sure that we share it. And when we share it with others, we're basically giving it back to God.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good point, because even as we've read, we read that whoever was able to spin yarn or do that kind of fine work, they volunteered their time, they gave their time, they gave their talents, they gave their treasures.
Yeah.
So,
one thing is, just I think kind of a unifying aspect too. We've got the nation, all the different tribes. Everybody's working toward a common goal at this point, which helps bring the people together.
Right, and their common goal is to, at this point anyway, their common goal is to know God and allow the nations around them to know God.
Yeah.
They weren't building this because of what they could get out of it.
Yeah.
They weren't giving so they could get a return on their investment, sort of thing. They were giving because they wanted to glorify God and see the whole earth glorify God.
Well, yeah, like as the tabernacle was the center of the camp, God had to be the center of their lives too.
Right, right,
Mm.
right. You wrote, Jim, in your notes, and I like that phrase. The giving that God asked them for freed them from the burden of their possessions and enabled them to get rid of potential idols. I love that thought. I mean, I've never really thought of it that way,
Yeah.
God, so often we as humans turn what we have into idols, into it's me, it's for me, it's mine, I worked hard for it, and we work even harder to keep it. And I've never really, until I read that, made that great connection of giving is freeing you from the burden of your possessions and getting rid of potential idols.
Yeah.
Jim, you wrote that, so talk a little bit more about it.
So here's the Israelites. They've been slaves for I don't know how many years. I mean, I don't know if it was all 400 because Joseph lived for a period of time there. But anyways, they were slaves for a long, long time, possessed nothing. Now all of a sudden they have an opportunity to gain possession, so they get probably a lot more than what they really need. They just, I'll take this, I'll take that, and I'll take that. Now they're carting it through the wilderness. They have to pack it. They have to carry it. They have to, wagons or whatever else. Now they have an opportunity, and there's a lot of care with it. They have to make sure that no one steals it and keep it in their possession. Now there's an opportunity to give it to God. And I have to think that as they gave a lot of that to God, all of a sudden they're going through the desert, and that burden is a lot less, a lot lighter to say, you know what? I'm glad I gave some of that to God, because man, I have to cart all that stuff around. So not only did I worship God, but I freed myself of all these things, and now I'm not worried about someone stealing it, about it becoming this little small g God in my life.
Yeah. I think of, as you were talking, I think of the burden it is for us as we are checking the stock market and the price of silver and gold, because we're investing that because we want it to grow, and if we happen to live to 100 years old, we got to make sure we have enough money and all of that kind of stuff. And it's a real burden. There's so much effort put into gaining more wealth.
Yeah.
So maybe is it?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering. I was thinking too. It's like we'd mentioned how a lot of times we work for stuff and we work, put all this time,
Yeah.
and a lot of this stuff was just given to them a few
Right.
months before.
Right.
So like they hadn't put all that investment of time
Yeah.
into acquiring it.
Right.
I was wondering how much too may have been little household gods and stuff from the people. Whether it was some little statues or they had gotten some of that stuff. There's a chance to get themselves free from all that stuff too.
That's a good thought. Yeah.
If there's somebody who would, these Egyptians maybe here, take this silver household god of ours.
Yeah. There's an interesting passage in Deuteronomy 8. I'll just read verse 18, but it says, "But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth." Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
Right? It's not our wisdom, it's not our great insight into the stock market or our work ethic. I mean, that is part of it, but remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. I don't know that we remember that. I don't know that why isn't that a verse that we memorize in Sunday school? Right? I mean, because I think in our day and age, wealth is ours.
Yeah.
So don't tell me how to use my money. Don't impose upon that part of my life because it's just mine and you'd have nothing to do with it.
Well, people don't think about that until their back starts going out.
True.
And all of a sudden, you can't do the jobs you used to do.
Right. Right. I guess this to me it just continues to speak to the question that I have in my mind about what makes a heart willing. I forget how many. I think I counted 5 times in Exodus 35. The word willingness or a heart that moved him is mentioned 5 times in those 10 verses. The emphasis is on the willingness of the heart that moved them. What's, as we talk about this in my mind, I'm still thinking, what makes a heart willing? What's the difference between a generous, willing heart and a heart that is stingy and mechanical? In 2 Corinthians 9 talks about, each should give what you've decided in your heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver.
Yeah.
And I think cheerful is the opposite to a mechanical giver.
Yeah.
It's that willingness of heart. It's that heart that's moved them. Help us understand that. Like, where does that come from? I think you were right to say that it's in response to God. So how do we get there? It's a big question.
Having a proper understanding of God, Scripture. If we're in Scriptures, if we're faithful in attending church, if we're doing those kinds of things, I think that God will automatically help us to appreciate Him more. At this point in my life, I think I am more thankful than I've ever been, more grateful to God than I've ever been, because each year I have a longer history of being able to look back and see all the things that God has done. And so what's my response? My response is to be generous with my time, my finances, my worship. I think it comes from that.
I think as we know God more,
Yes.
as we understand who He is, as we recognize our position before Him and His sovereignty and His love and His salvation for us.
Well, yeah, it's like, it's like gratitude, that appreciation, and just, I think you just were reading scripture and you start seeing all the things God does. And just as we go through our daily lives, we see all the things God does for us. It's a response to that love that He gives us.
Right.
And it's, it's the gratitude, the appreciation. I don't know if there's anything you can do other than you know, you keep thinking, what can we do to bring about this response to people? It's like, I mean, I don't think there's any psychological tricks
Right. Well,
like
and there
they have
shouldn't
at
be, yeah.
casinos with
Right.
the funky carpet and the no.
Right.
There's
Right.
nothing like that you can do
Set us
that
up
will
for being free
manipulate
within
a
it.
heart.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's God
Yeah.
working on the heart.
Yeah. And as we know him, we understand him and the importance of his kingdom. I think too, when we don't understand the importance of his kingdom and what it means to the eternity of people around us, that causes stinginess.
Yeah.
Right? I think when we really understand the importance of eternity in light of temporary, it's like, what am I working so hard for the temporary? Why am I investing so much in this temporary when it's the eternal that is eternal that makes the difference?
You know, I don't know where the verse is, but there's we're only giving back to you what you've given to us.
Yes.
So a number of years ago, I was doing a sermon on giving, and so I was inspired. So we had this little sticker, and it says, God owns this. And I gave everyone 5 stickers to put it everywhere. So I put mine in my guitar. I had one on the visor of my vehicle. I had one in my Whitefish Credit Union passbook where I have some money deposited. It's just sort of reminded me that it's not really mine.
Yeah.
It's God's. One girl, I think she's 11 or 12, she put it on her blouse and went to school and says, God owns this. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is.
When we realize that ultimately we're just stewards, and we talk about that, but that God really owns it, and so He puts the touch on us. What happened with the rich young ruler? He wanted to serve Jesus. He said he kept all His commandments, and God said, or Jesus said, "How about giving everything away to the poor and come and follow me?" Jesus put His finger on that one thing, that the possessions had the man, not the man had the possessions.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I'm noticing that we probably need to wrap this up. I want to keep going, but
Yeah.
I think we need to wrap it up. I guess, maybe if I can wrap it up this way, we want to make sure that we're giving out of relationship and not mechanics.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's the whole crux of it. Have we become mechanical in our, not only in our giving, but in our Christianity? Checking off the boxes, saying I'm good before God because I'm checking off the boxes. My car, my spiritual life doesn't have that rattle anymore because I brought it to the mechanic and it's fixed. I'm doing the mechanical things right.
I've done my time.
Yeah. I've prayed, I've read the Bible, I've given, I've gone to church, I even went to a prayer meeting, I'm good, I've done the mechanical things. But do we understand more deeply who God is and the importance of his kingdom? More things to think on and pray about, but for now, thank you guys for joining me on this one.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your insights. Jesus said to his disciples and to us in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Matthew 6:19. Do not store up treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. For wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. Let's fix our heart and the desires of our heart on the kingdom of God and those who need to hear it. Thanks for joining us.